Hi, welcome to MITZ TV by BESA San Diego, a Mitzvah Event Specialist Association. Remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel down below. Also, check out the video description for the topics covered in today's episode. Hello and welcome to MITZ TV, an informative and fun look into the world of mitzvahs and special events brought to you by BESA San Diego, a Mitzvah Event Specialist Association. Each episode will be bringing you demonstrations, panel discussions, and special talk shops with some of our vendors to give you an informative look at the world of mitzvahs. So today's talk shop, we have the fabulous folks from Mitzvah Event Productions coming in to give us a quick and informative guide into the many choices available for your mitzvah or event. Let's take a quick look at Mitzvah Event Productions. Okay, this is exciting. So joining us today, we actually have the president of BESA. She's a founding member and also the owner of Mitzvah Event Productions and Charming Expressions, Lydia Krasner. How are you, Lydia?
Hi, great. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. And then we also have your right hand, Miss Karen Ward, joining us.
Hi.
Hi, Karen. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Great to see you. Everybody's looking so fabulous today. So I know that we want to get into the nitty gritty here. So with you guys coming through as event professionals and also planners, I know that you guys receive a lot of questions on what should I do for my event? And sometimes it just kind of comes down to some just basic choices. So one of those first things that we want to take a look at are the choices between whether we have an event either day or night. So Lydia, can you take that?
Sure, I'll start with that. So many of the services are in the morning. There are some synagogues that offer an afternoon service. So for the most part, the service is in the morning, and then many people choose to have an event in the evening. So they have a kiddush luncheon right after the service. But then the nice thing is the guests have time to go home or go back to their hotel and chill out for a while. And it gives the opportunity for the family to get ready and redressed, and maybe mom and daughter want to get their hair done. And then we take pictures before the evening function, and it's a completely different theme than the kiddush.
Fabulous. And then Karen, can you give us the nighttime alternative? Why a nighttime event would be ideal?
Daytime.
I'm sorry, daytime. Daytime. Boop.
Well, they both. I agree with Lydia for the nighttime people. If you have a lot of out-of-town guests, I think the nighttime is great because you have that break and they can go to their hotel. The daytime is great if you. There's a few different aspects. You can actually save some money having a daytime event. Sometimes it is less to have your event during the day, so you just save money. You can go in, like Lydia said, you're nonstop. You're going right from the actual service to the event, and there's no stopping there. There's no disconnect, and you can get everything done all at once. And some people like that, and they don't want to have that in between area. But I think that the main part of the daytime, I would say, is so that you can just have a less formal type of event. And that's the reason why a lot of people choose to do the daytime.
Understandable. So it's kind of like a nice little counterpoint that we have going on here. So so we just took a look at what nighttime and daytime events, those verses. Now, if we look at the next subject that we're thinking about. So when a parent comes to you and they want to know what is the difference between having a kid-only party and what happens when we introduce adult mix? How would we handle that? Karen, let's go with you first.
Sure. So the kid-only party is a great idea if you're going to have usually you have, again, you can save money that way. I hate to go back to the money, but a lot of times you're not going to have as big an elaborate event. A lot of times, if you don't have a lot of out-of-town guests, you're going to opt for that. And sometimes the child is just wants that, and they're adamant, and they don't want the adults involved, and some parents are okay with that. The child only type of situation is usually a little bit shorter of a party and definitely less formal again. So like the daytime would be less formal. A child only party is definitely less formal. So it doesn't happen as often, but it does happen, and usually you're having a smaller event and a shorter event and a less formal event.
Okay.
And for the events that incorporate the kids and the adults, it's a little more family oriented. And I like those the best because I feel like you can watch the kids, and the parents love to participate. They do the motzi, and we do the hora, and the families get involved, and you have all generations in the room. And it's a really exciting time because I feel like the adults really enjoy watching the kids have a good time, and it's so interactive.
Okay, so we're looking at just kind of the differences here that I'm hearing personally are, so when we have a kid party, that, you know, we can kind of keep things a little bit more condensed. We're not introducing adults into the mix. You're saving a little bit of, because you're not feeding a bunch of adults, and you also don't have the alcohol bill on the other side. But then on the other end, we're looking at adult parties when we introduce that. So we're kind of just getting at a full family experience. So then the memories actually created with grandmas and aunts and uncles and all those sorts of things. So
sure. And if you have a candle lighting, then you really need to do that when you have the full generations there. It's kind of hard to do a candle lighting when you have just the kids. Mm-hmm. And it's so much nicer to have the adults to lift the child and do the hora and get the child up in the chair, and you get those really awesome pictures from having the entire family there.
Real quick question here, just to kind of get some insight into this. So if somebody was thinking that they want to kind of just keep it to being a kids party, but then have a couple exclusive adults there, is that something that people sometimes will do? Is that, you know, just having grandma, grandpa, a couple of these, you know, that kind of thing? Does that happen?
Yeah, we've done that where we have just a table for the adults, or I've even had kids that say the adults are not allowed in the room. So outside in what would be a foyer or a cocktail space, we would have adults having a meal. And I've even done them where the kids would be in one room and the adults are in another room. So it is kind of two separate parties. And then maybe bringing in a live music element for the adults, like a pianist or something like that.
Nice. And so mom and dad can actually have their own little gig at the same time. That's fun. Let's going from there. So you're talking about sometimes splitting them up into two separate rooms, but let's talk about venues. So I know that you guys gave me here that we want to look at, you know, people using the temple or their home versus going to a hotel or a country club or a specialty venue. So let's expand upon those. So let's take that away. Lydia?
Okay, so there are so many different kinds of venues. I think specialty venues are really neat. I've had people use nightclubs and sports venues, depending on your theme. Sometimes you want to drive the venue based on what the theme is going to be. A hotel and a country club are very different in the sense that with a hotel, you're out of towners. If you have a lot of people coming, enjoy staying in a hotel and not having to drive to the function. They can just go downstairs, and then they don't have to worry about drinking and driving or finding transportation, or sometimes the transportation is provided by the family. But it just seems to make it a little bit easier for the flow, for the guest experience, for the out-of-towners. And when you talk about a country club, you don't have the same sleeping arrangements, but they are very private. And so that's nice as well. So Karen, maybe you want to talk about a temple or a home party?
Yeah, so there's so many venue choices, right? So a lot of times someone might opt to have it at their home or a clubhouse or something that's completely different. Or sometimes they just want this really cool venue that's not even normally a venue. They want to turn it into a venue. So I think the main thing you have to think about there is when you're at a hotel, we take it for granted. Everything's there. We have the tables, the dishes, the kitchen, everything is there and ready to go. Anytime you're going outside of that, you have to really understand that you'll probably have to bring a lot of those things in. So now there's a lot of different vendors, which of course, Lydia, as a planner, will handle that for you, and she has those contacts. However, there's a lot of little pieces to make one big piece together, whereas in a hotel, it's pretty exclusive. You have to sometimes think about the cleanup differently. You have to think about bathrooms. Sometimes you don't even have, you have to bring in your own restrooms. So there's sort of other aspects of having it outside. I mean, again, they could be very cool. We've done so many everywhere. It's just a lot more to think about and put together when you're not in a hotel that's all inclusive. And the same can go with having it at a temple, which again, very convenient, because especially for a daytime party, you can go right to your service into the party. And the temple has a lot of things there for you, but then you still have to bring in a lot of things, including the service. The service meaning the bartenders and the servers and the food.
It's quite interesting when you kind of like think about all of that, because, you know, sometimes people may think that, oh, I want to have just a party at home and invite, you know, 150 people, and they're not actually taking into account getting those people fed, sitting them somewhere, finding a restroom for them even. So it's just, it is kind of amazing about all the different things that you guys as, you know, planners essentially really have to pre-think and have ready to go for these kind of events. And
I have to add, for a home party, you have to also think about the police because when you're having a party at home, you have to, and you know, some parks and things, you need certain permits, but at home, that is another challenge that has happened to us.
And so it's one of those things where you want to run outside and give your neighbors a nice bottle of wine and say, are you guys coming to the party too? So going from that, where would your perception be, whether a band or a DJ? What are you guys looking at?
Well, most kids like to hear the music the way it's played on the radio. We have also done several events with bands, but those tend to be a little bit more of the adult events. And we've also done the combo. Karen, you want to speak to the combination?
Sure. I have to say that the combo, of course, that's like the creme de la creme. You have the best of both worlds, because the kids love to have a DJ. They love to hear the music as you hear it on the radio. And a lot of the songs they love to hear and dance to aren't necessarily something a band's going to play. So when you have a DJ and a band, you really have the best of both worlds, and they can switch off sets. So the band or set, usually everyone is dancing, especially the adults, and then they can switch off, take a break, and the DJ can have their set, and that's catered more toward the kids usually. So, I mean, that is the best of both worlds. Again, the creme de la creme of a party, especially works for a larger party and a party that has both a lot of adults and a lot of children.
Absolutely.
And also if you're having the DJ, you have someone that can entertain the kids with games while the adults are having dinner. And the DJ can call the hora and do a lot of the emceeing along with not just playing the music. And yes, with a band, you may have an MC as well. But I'd say probably 99% of the bar mitzvahs use a DJ, but a lot of people like a live music element. So that can also be brought into the cocktail hour. We've had a trio or a contemporary guitarist or a harpist or something during the cocktail hour, so you get that live music element. And then you can also even bring in live music during dinner. So that's another option where you have the DJ, but maybe there's a specialty musician that comes in and does like a mini concert during dinner, so that while the adults are seated and the kids are eating, you can do something that's a little more live.
So it kind of helps build the event too, you know, kind of in that sense, you know, just coming from myself as being an entertainment company, is that you, when you have a band and a DJ both in the same, you never have a gap in that music. You have energy going all night long. And then I love too that you brought up the bringing in a live musician to accent your dinner, and then you can keep on building the party. So something different keeps happening all night long. So really great points there for a DJ versus band. Now, if we look at, let's go into a little bit of, let's change gears here for the choices. So we have choices. And one of the biggest choices that everybody always wants to know about is theme. And then the other thing is can we have a party with essentially no theme? How does that work?
Yeah, I'll start there I'll kind of hit on the no theme. So some people get stressed out about a theme, and Lydia will talk a little bit about themes in a minute, but you don't have to have a theme. A theme can be just a feeling or colors that you like. So you could take the colors that you like and make a room beautiful, or you can have a feeling. I mean, do you like a nightclubby type of vibe, or do you like a garden? So we can take something that's not necessarily theme and still make the room warm and beautiful with just as much as a color or a flower, something that just sparks something in you. So you don't have to have a theme, and there doesn't have to be stress around it, but themes are very fun, very popular, and I'll let Lydia talk more about them.
Yeah, so one of the first questions I always ask is, do you have a theme? And if you look at our website, there are so many photos that can give you some inspiration. Sometimes things are geared towards a sport that the child does, or if they dance, or if they play music, or maybe they like candy, or there's so many different options. Skateboarding and baking and Hollywood and beach. And sometimes a lot of people like a beach theme. That's one of the most popular, just because they have so many out-of-towners come and they think, oh, we're in California, so we're going to serve Mexican food and we're going to have a beach theme. So people really feel like they're getting that California experience. So a lot of it is thinking what's going to be appropriate for the time of year. We've definitely done plenty of winter themes, but they tend to fall in January and February. And then those beach themes can pretty much happen any time of year. So it's always a lot of fun to dive into a theme and create some authenticity along with it. And just have a lot of fun being creative.
Wonderful. So when you think about, so that gives us a lot to think about, because when you think about a party, it doesn't necessarily have to be a theme. We don't have to be a Harry Potter party. We can actually just be everybody, she likes pink, and let's make everything pink, and that's pretty much where we can go. So it's having a theme that doesn't have a theme. Looks like we have a question here from Shirley. So she's just asking, how has the virus changed receptions?
Well, we haven't had one yet since the virus has happened. I will say that the food service has changed, and the amount of people allowed to be at a table will change. There'll be a lot more separation, hopefully bigger rooms, bigger dance floors for people to participate. And Karen, over to you.
I was kind of laughing at it internally. How has it changed it? Well, there are none. So that's how it's changed. I'm curious, right, to see exactly how things will happen, such as we kind of talked earlier, maybe later too, about buffets and how that will work, something that's very popular in reception. And I just think it's a little bit of a waiting game and seeing how we can navigate around, what's happening, and hopefully this can be over soon.
Absolutely. And I think it's just right now we're just kind of living minute by minute, I think, in the sense that, we're kind of holding out hope. And then at the same time, we're planning for the best future, but then taking precautions. And so I know here on MITZ TV, we're actually taking a deeper look at some of our venues and some of our caterers, and they're actually giving us some solutions that they're finding. And so it's not all hope is lost, that we are making some solutions, and that things are changing. And as we keep on evolving, as the parties keep evolving, it's, it'll be different. And then hopefully by this time next year, we kind of get back to some sense of normalcy of what we used to have in events, when we had events, like you were saying. So yeah. Lydia, you had a comment there as well?
Well, I was going to say that things are changing, but so many people are even doing their service over Zoom, and maybe having just a family luncheon with a few people, and then they're postponing their parties so that everybody can enjoy and celebrate together. And I think that that's a safe way to do it, especially with the older folks in the family. And some people are postponing their service and reading a different Torah portion, or even reading the same one, depending on what the synagogue allows. A lot of them are postponing an entire year, and so then they can read the accurate Torah portion. And hopefully it'll be a safe time then, where everybody can sit shoulder to shoulder in the synagogue and raise the child up in the chair and really celebrate together, and not be afraid to being so close to people.
Absolutely. I think that it's also, that's a good point too, is that people are still, they're getting their mitzvah, they're going in, they're doing their reading, but just like a wedding, that sometimes people go away for a wedding and then they will elope, and they come back, and then they decide they're going to do a dinner later in the year, and that they're going to have all of their friends and everybody enjoy. And so that's something that I think that we can still do as a mitzvah, is that they can have their ceremony, but then we can delay the celebration a little bit later so when everybody can come into town and enjoy it with everybody. So I think it's a fabulous point there. So just a little bit more too, let's talk, since we're talking about this and the safety in these receptions, just expanding a little bit more on the hotel aspect.
Yes. So you're talking about like with the food?
Mm-hmm. And the venues and things.
With the venues. So from what I understand from talking to several venues, because we haven't experienced an event since COVID began, is that even for the kids buffets, they are going to do more of the, I call it the lunch lady style, where there will be a server behind glass asking the kids, how many meatballs do you want? Or do you want sprinkles on your sundae? And everything will be done for them and handed over to the guest. And I feel like the adults will probably be going a little bit more with a plated meal for safety.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing with hors d'oeuvres. They're probably going to be stationary and people will go over and say, I would like 2 spanakopita or however that works. And they will be handed from behind glass safely a small plate.
Exactly. And so, okay, so Cheryl Guilford is saying, Judy Schultz wants to know, how far out should I book my venue and vendors, and what if I change my mind later?
Well, I can say definitely as early as possible for booking, but we all need to be flexible right now. So typically people would hire us anywhere from 6 months to 2.5 years out. Once you get your date, I'd say that the first things you need to concentrate on would be what I call the big 5. And that's your planner, your venue / caterer. Again, if you're having it at a temple, then that's a 6th one because you're incorporating a caterer, your video, your photography, and your music and DJ or band. So those are the things that you can count on right away. And then decor can happen in a very short period of time. So that's something that can take place even within a few weeks. But, you know, we hope we have a little bit more than a few weeks. And if you change your mind as far as the theme, we hope that that's why we don't really start digging into the theme until, 3-4 months out, so that a lot of these kids at different ages, they mature and they change, and we don't want them to commit to it too early. So we prefer if they hold back a little bit and keep the ideas flowing, but then really dive into the theme as it gets closer.
Absolutely. I always use, for whenever we talk about themes, I always use the whole, people wanted Game of Thrones for the longest time. And then Game of Thrones' final season came out and people were very upset. And they decided, I'm not doing Game of Thrones any longer. I'm doing King Arthur. They swapped on us, kind of last minute. So it is one of those things that you can keep the theme out there at bay. And as long as you have the other the bones to your event that are all booked out, then, we have time later on to swap that kind of thing out. Okay.
Well,
so
if you think about, if you think about somebody like your photographer, there's only one typically, or maybe 2 people that you're working with the company. So it's important that you book them early because they're going to get other dates booked quickly as well. And if you want that person, you need to jump on it instead of waiting until the last minute and taking whoever's left. So if you want to get your first choice, you need to jump on contacting your first choice and booking them. And if you have to change your date, obviously now so many with the pandemic have had to change their date. It's really a game of who's available.
Yeah, and who's going to be flexible and what your flexibility is really. So I think to that extent. So let's get back into our choices. So let's theme this out, and so let's get on to the next part. So we were just talking a little bit about buffet stations, but what is going to be our big difference in the choice between having a plated meal and a buffet or food station kind of meal? So Lydia, how would you look at that, the difference?
Well, I think that the food stations are always fun, especially if you're doing something like an international theme and you want to represent different countries. I think that that's a great way to go, and it gives people a lot of variety. And it also promotes movement around the room. Instead of a plated meal where you're sitting with however many people are at your table, it's kind of nice to get up and move around. And I particularly love interactive dessert stations. So once we get back into parties, I feel like there are just so many options out there, and dessert can be entertainment too. So, if you have a nitrogen ice cream or donuts or something interactive, that makes it a lot of fun. And I know that all the companies in BESA that we work with have all made their changes that need be so that they can safely serve people and people can still have the choices of what they offer.
Absolutely. And so, Karen, what is your insight on the plated versus buffet station?
Yeah, I have a little bit of a different, well, not a different thought process. I agree with everything that Lydia just said. However, some venues dictate it to you because of it's too small to have buffet stations and you're kind of forced to have a sit down, or it could be that the venue doesn't really have the right type of kitchen, or if you're bringing one of those venues where you bring everyone in, you need a lot more servers to do a plated. And so you have to look at that as well. So sometimes it may, the situation that, hey, buffet of stations are going to work better. I mean, previously, now they're going to obviously need to be staffed a little bit differently as well, post-COVID. However, it may be that it's not really conducive to be able to do plated in some instances, and then the other way around as well if you don't have the room. So there's a lot of things to look at, and including the venue and where you are and how many people you have and how the room is filled.
Absolutely. Indoor versus outdoor, how many people are allowed inside the venue at a certain time, and what the counts are going to be, what our state, regulations will be. So as we move over, and we're still talking about food here, let's look at kosher versus non-kosher. And so how do we handle that situation? Let's break into that one.
Karen, why don't you start with that one?
I was going to let you go with that one. I don't know that it's that much of a choice. I mean, if you're a kosher family, usually you're going to be seeking a kosher event, right? And there's different options, catering options, and I'll let Lydia go into detail of how hotels handle that as well. But I can say, even if you're doing a non-kosher event in full, you may have some guests that are kosher. So you definitely have to try to solve for that, and there are options for that as well. I'll let Lydia get in a little bit more detail with the kosher.
Yeah, so a lot of times the synagogue also dictates that the rabbis won't come unless you have a kosher event. Some of them say that they will if you have just a dairy event. So there are options. There are some hotels that do kosher. There are also hotels that will allow you to bring in a kosher caterer. And if you bring in a kosher caterer, it is going to be a little pricier because they have to completely redo the kitchen with foil or bring in a makeshift kitchen. And it gets a little more expensive. But one way you can save on that is if you're not having a kosher event, but you do have to accommodate a handful of kosher guests, we can bring in some sealed meals that can be reheated, that can have the hechsher on it and be completely kosher. And it just depends on how many kosher people you have.
Absolutely.
If you want to have a completely kosher event, that's also wonderful to do. And there are so many kosher caterers out there. And some of the hotels, if you're doing it in a hotel versus a temple, they may have a preferred vendor that you have to work with. So that's something that we would just have to discuss with the property. But if you're having it at a temple, again, they usually have a preferred list. And some of them rent the kosher dishes. Otherwise, you will have to bring in your own glassware, your own flatware, and that type of thing.
So it's not scary. So people, that's one of the things too, is I think that when you're looking in that, we need to have a kosher meal and we're at a hotel, like all hope is not lost. There are solutions for that situation. So let's getting on over. And so into entertainment, let's go back into that subject. And so if we look at, if we were going to be having entertainment, what is your thought process on that? Like entertainment, can it just be the DJ? Can we add extras in? What else can we do to get the biggest bang for our buck?
Well, there are a lot of forms of entertainment, and especially if you're having a kid-only party, that's super important. Or if you're having a lot of kids, some parties are 20, some kids are 150. And it's important that you understand that the kids that age have kind of a short entertainment span. So it's nice to have variety. It's also nice to have something that they can go home with. So we really like to do options for entertainment, photo booths. We also own a company called Charming Expressions, and we have a little video that can show you some of the things that Charming Expressions offers. So Charming Expressions offers a lot of different options as a side entertainment, especially during your cocktail hour. The kids really don't do much for that first hour, not like the adults that are really wanting to catch up with their friends and family. And the kids love to have some kind of entertainment. So we typically suggest to have 2 or 3 options, something that can transition into your ballroom, a caricaturist or games, things like that. It's just a really nice opportunity for the kids to socialize and have something to do. And it can also double as a favor, for instance, if they were taking home one of the water bottles you just saw or the bracelets. So Karen, what are some of your favorite options for entertainment?
So I think with entertainment, I love, especially, I'm going to plug the water bottle sticker shock because they're wildly popular for the few times we were able to use them before COVID happened. So I think that what's great about that type of entertainment, like you said, you could take it home, but it also appeals to kids. It appeals to the adults too, but the boys and the girls. So I think one of the things that we have to think about with entertainment, especially that's going to be focused toward the kids in the cocktail hour, is this a boy heavy party? Is it a girl heavy party? Is it mixed? Because ideally you want something to both of them, but sometimes you can have a ton of girls. Well, you're going to need something that's going to spark their interest. And there are options there, crazy hair, and there's lots of different options that are just geared toward girls. Sometimes if it's boy heavy, we're going to want to bring in game machines, some basketball games or things like that the boys are going to gravitate to more. So you have to know your audience again and think about their experience. But we also think about entertainment for adults. We have had impersonators and lots of other options that the adults really like as well. So.
And I also enjoy bringing in surprises later in the evening. So if you have a dinner entertainment option, like we've had the 3 waiters, and we've had so many fun things that give people an opportunity that appeals to the adults and the kids, but also like the candy bar would happen after dinner. You think all the surprises are done, and then the candy bar is revealed, and they get the adults. I haven't seen a Swedish fish since I was 12 years old. They get so excited and they come running over, and the adults love the candy just as much as the kids. So it's a lot of fun to have continuous reveals of entertainment throughout the evening.
Absolutely. So it like we said before, it helps build, and it helps people stay engaged and they have fun with it. And so when we're just constantly, when there's a new activity at the party, people will keep on talking about it after the party's over. So we are going to look at, let's look at timing. So when we look at how much we can actually pack into an event. And so 4 hours versus a 5-hour event. And so I know we're getting a little bit nitpicky there, but what's the difference between those two time zones?
Karen?
Well, it sounds nitpicky, but that hour can be huge. I mean, again, if you're having a party that's all kids or kid heavy, you want a shorter party. You don't want a 5-hour party. Usually a 5-hour party is a full hour cocktail and then a 4-hour party. So you're going to want to look at, again, your guest and the size of the party and the venue to really dictate whether you need a full hour for cocktail, if you only need half an hour, 45 minutes, or if you don't need a cocktail hour at all. So there's a lot of different variables there, but I definitely say for a child-only party, kid parties, we're going to want to keep it short, much shorter, and then going with the size of the guest list and how many adults you can extend out. Also, know your crowd too. Some people are they know their crowd are big partiers and they're going to want that time. They know that a lot of their crowd strolls in late and they're going to need that long cocktail hour. So there's there's a lot of different variables there.
Understandable.
Totally.
And Lydia,
sorry.
No, I'm just saying, what were your thoughts on those points?
Well, a cocktail hour is a great opportunity when everybody is trickling in. And then after the first hour, if you were having an adult and kid party together, then you have the big reveal of opening the doors to the ballroom, and you get the ooh-ah when everybody walks in. And it's a beautiful reveal. So that's kind of fun. I feel like sometimes the rooms are voluminous, and if you're not having a cocktail hour in a separate space, people that trickle in at the beginning feel a little bit like, oh, I don't know if I want to go in there because it's a really big room. And so if you have a smaller space, it gives people a chance to gather. when you're having a kid only party, I do agree with Karen that you don't really have a cocktail hour. You might have some little noshi foods out and have the DJ playing some games, and then they get really into it after a half hour or so. But the 5-hour party, I think, is usually the average. Sometimes we see 4.5, depending on if it's at some of the temples, they say you have to be done by 10 because they have neighbors and it might be a sound issue. Most of the hotels, the kids are okay being picked up at 11 or even 11:30. But I always ask my clients to be conscious of the other parents that are picking up their kids, because if you have a party go till midnight, most parents don't want to get out of the house and go pick up their child at midnight. So we try to keep the parties, 6 to 10, 6 to 10:30, 6 to 11, 6:30 to 11:30, whatever works.
Absolutely. So, I mean, those are really good points. And I think that's something too that people don't think about, that the time that they are, number one, responsible for other people's engagement and their children. And then the other, when you move people around, that you're going to want to push people from cocktail hour into the next room. It'll take a moment for people to get settled. They eat, then we have to clear the plates, and then let's get the party started. So there is, every moment of that is being taken up when you have
And
that party.
We also are very conscious of the time of year and when the sun sets. Some people want to have an ocean view. Some people don't want to be outside when it's cold, and others want to start their party earlier in the winter so that they can have some light. Maybe the country club is far away and they want to make sure everybody can get there while it's still daylight and they can see how to get there with their older folks. So it just depends on when the sun goes down and how people want to work it. And the availability of the venue too, because there could be a luncheon in the room where we would say, oh, we need as much time as we can get. So we don't want to start till 6:30 so that our team has a little bit more time to get the party set up.
Absolutely. So now you were speaking about that. So let's talk about that inside versus outside event. So we're looking at the timing of the day that has to do with when how cold it's getting. Is there something that do you have a way that you would steer parents in this situation on whether or not they should book a daytime versus nighttime? Or is it really kind of dependent on the time of year, really, that's going to drive that?
I think it really depends on the time of year. Clearly, in the winter, it's not safe to schedule a wedding ceremony or a bar mitzvah ceremony or even a cocktail hour outside unless you have a backup, because it can get kind of dicey. You never know. There absolutely has to be an opportunity to bring people to an indoor space if it's winter, because it could be rainy, it could be ugly, it could be cold. And the last thing we want is to have an outdoor event and have the guests be uncomfortable and then they leave. The whole point of having everybody there is so that we can all gather and enjoy. And in the summertime, you have the opposite, because you could have a Labor Day weekend where it's 114 degrees and you want to make sure that you have an indoor space so that people who really can't handle the heat have an opportunity to go sit down in the cool air.
Absolutely. It's creating a memorable event for the right reasons. This is really one of those points. And so, Karen, do you have any thoughts about the indoor versus outdoor conversation?
Yeah, I think just to say that make sure you have people on speed dial, because it could be a day that you think is supposed to be warm and it ends up being freezing, and you got to get some heat lamps in there ASAP, or maybe or which has happened. So just make sure that we're going to make sure for the guests that we have that ready for you, actually, that if that happens, we can get those heat lamps there, we can get misters if we need them, and backup plan. I'm big on tents, so tents can give you shade and tents can also cover for the rain. So I make sure the area that if you can't decide that you have a tent available, for you. So there's definitely risk with having an outdoor party, but I love outdoor parties at the same time. So,
and there are specialty venues that have some great outdoor spaces. Like if you look at one of our member venues is the Flower Fields up in Carlsbad. You can have your ceremony outside, but they have a big sort of barn area where you can have your reception. So if it were to rain, they could probably work it out so you have the ceremony in the room if you have to. And we've had to move, like Karen said, we've had to move weddings that got rained on. We did one in May one time that was going to be a gorgeous day, and it turned out that it poured so badly, the entire thing had to be moved in. So it was just one of those things where you have to kind of be Johnny on the spot. And sometimes people don't realize the value of having a planner along for the ride. And if you want to check out what it is to have a planner, look at our website, and there's a great video about how you can work with a planner and how we can be there to help you and kind of hold your hand through the whole process. Because sometimes when you have emergencies like that, the hosts really don't have the tools to make those corrections. And we have a lot of resources, and we're great at making those changes at the last minute if need be.
Absolutely. So before we wrap this one up today, so I just want to kind of reiterate that there too, is that, so, you know, when you are planning a mitzvah and you're planning an event, it is really great to have a planner on your side who knows mitzvahs. It's different than a wedding, and it's different than a regular corporate kind of event, because there are some touchstones you have to hit during the ceremony, during the actual, during the party. We want to make sure that things actually pop off. And so when you have a professional such as Lydia or Karen in your corner, there's a real benefit to having that. You have two people with an immense amount of tools in their toolbox. And so you'll find that kind of throughout the whole BESA organization. You know, really people who know mitzvahs, they know these special events, and they know their craft, which is really, really wonderful. So I know right now we're streaming at the bottom over here that you can see Mitzvah Event Productions. You can get in touch with them either through Facebook, Instagram. You can go right onto their website, check out those videos, check out their photos. It's a lot of fun. It's beautiful colors, and the thing is, and so it's very attractive. So just get on in there, and then you'll get some really, really good information, as well as that great eye candy. So before we leave today, I know that RJ from SoCal Green Screen, he did set us up with some mitzvah trivia. So let's go on to our very first mitzvah trivia question by SoCal Green Screen. So it's a little bit of a dad joke there with our mitzvah trivia. So we want to give you guys a nice little smile on your faces for the day. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. We've had Lydia Krasner and Karen Ward both in from Mitzvah Event Productions, Charming Expressions. You guys can find them on the BESASanDiego.com website, and you can also find them at their Instagram, their Facebook, or even on their websites. So go ahead and do that research, and they will be sure to hold your hand through this event process. Please do check us out again here at MITZ TV. Do like and subscribe us on YouTube. Find our Instagram pages, find our social media, become our friends, and we're going to be a great friend to you. So again, thanks so much for joining us for another episode of MITZ TV by BESA San Diego. I'm D'Angelo from Balada Entertainment, and that's been RJ running the show today from SoCal Green Screen. Thanks so much, everybody.